Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of this Lightbox project. And remember last time we're at the point where we've got a window that comes up. We have a blank canvas. We can load in an image, load in our sheep little guy here, and then it automatically resizes itself when the window changes sizes, which is cool. I think what I want to try to get working on next is probably the calibrate stuff. Like there's going to be a couple of buttons in here, some entry fields, and then I'll have to obviously figure out how to retrieve the coordinates from this picture where I click on some spots. So I'm going to get going on that, and I'll check in with you guys in a bit. Well, this is not what I had in mind, but it is something. So I'm noticing some strange behavior right now. I was working on this calibrate functionality, and what I wanted to happen was the existing GRABIT Matlab app. When you press the calibrate button, it stays sort of sunken, and it tells you like currently calibrating or something like that. I wanted to do that, and I thought it was just going to be as easy as I take the button and I kind of reconfig the relief to sunken, which is like the pressed position. But when I do that, I get some strange behavior. I press the button and you can see it's not staying clicked. it goes in, then pops back up. If I click and hold, it does the same thing. But if I double click, it does it. And I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. The small amount of looking I've done online suggests that it's something with the button has its own internal callback mechanism that it, whenever there's a mouse click, it appears sunken for a brief amount of time and then goes back. So this might be contradicting that, and it's like a timing issue that I need to I need to wait or something like that, or the button to come out of its own callback to handle my thing here. The other option is I can just make it a label. Like, these are labels, they're not buttons whatsoever, but you can make a label and have it and set the relief of it so it appears raised and it looks like a button, but then it wouldn't get this highlighting effect when I roll my mouse over. So I gotta figure out what's going on with this. This is peculiar. So it seems to be working now, and all I had to do was add in this state equals disabled argument, and then so it does pretty much what I want it to do. So if I come here, I say calibrate axes, it's gonna stay sunken and appear in this grayed out disabled state. You might not be able to see it, but it says calibrating ... in here. I'll probably make that red or something just to be a little more visible. I don't know exactly why this fixed. What I'm guessing happens without the disabled, I'm guessing that I press the button. In the background, the button gets pressed and then it's sunken, and then it comes to my own code, configures itself as sunken. At the same time, whatever, how many milliseconds later, the button's own callback function raises it. So my guess is that the button callback makes it sunken, and then it comes in here, and while it's sunken, it disables. So it appears as though it's stuck. It's kind of stuck in that position. Now that I have the button working somewhat okay, I have to have some type of get calibration coordinates method. And this gets into a little bit of where I think I'm weak with graphical programs, and I'm not certain where this method should live. It's certainly a function you're doing after pressing this button, but you're getting the points from the canvas. So should this method, should it live here, or should I be calling, canvas.get calibration, get calibrate coordinates, and this method lives within the canvas class? And in addition to that, where does the data live? If I run this method and I click on xmin, that's going to give me an x and a y, probably in a tuple. That tuple has to be stored somewhere, and I'm not sure where the application data should live. I'm guessing should maybe live, I'll get rid of this so it doesn't error on me. Oops. I didn't even realize this, but my geometry is getting a little squished over here. This will happen if there are no children in this box, in my experience. As soon as I put some type of list box in this frame, it'll go back to its normal size, kind of. But maybe the calibration data gets stored as a tuple within the tabular data. Or maybe it should stay in memory. I want to store it in the location where it makes the most sense. And that is not obvious to me at the moment. You know something? This just occurred to me that the most appropriate place to store all application data seems like it might be appropriate to do it in the root window. Because these classes are going to be sharing data, so it seems correct that the data should live in here. Like, you know, this is just pseudocode, but I'd have a self.file name, self. Calibration chord, self. Graph data, maybe that's a list of list of tuples. You know, maybe it all lives here. But the thing with that, and maybe it can be done. Like if I'm here in the calibrate class, there's no easy way for this class to access its parent. Well, there is, but its parent is a label frame class. Its parent is not the root window, and maybe that's a flaw in the architecture of this. Maybe that's something I should change, so that the children can easily access its parent, which is the root window. Well, I'm here in the debug window. What I did is I set a breakpoint within this calibrate on button press callback, just to see what variables I have access to, and it turns out I can do self.parent. Parent gets me to this label frame object, but that label frame object has a master. It actually has, I think, I thought I set it up such that the label frame also has a parent. If I do self.parent.parent, oops, not that. It says it doesn't have one. Label frame object has no attribute parent. Oh, because I specify a parent when I init. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. That's the same story. I specify a parent when I initialize the class, but I don't actually save it as an attribute. At any rate, what I'm getting at is I do have the ability to, if I'm within calibrate, here we go. If I'm within this callback, I do have the ability to access the parent window, because if I do self.parent.master, or if I change it and self.parent.parent, it kind of goes up a level, so to speak. I can save all of the application data in the root object, which I like the idea of doing that. It does feel slightly hacky to do this. I would rather have it be obvious to me. You know, if I'm looking here in the root object and I have like 20 or something attributes, I know exactly what all of the application data is. It's a little silly to do this in Python because Python's interpreted and I believe the term is dynamically typed. So you don't have to pre-allocate storage and memory. But in, you know, a language like C or something, which I have granted very little experience with, this is something you would have to do is pre-allocate all of your variables, which I used to kind of think was annoying, but it is helpful to let you know kind of what's coming. Rather than self.parent.parent, I noticed that I could just, when I'm in here in the root class, I could just pass in root as a parameter to the construction of this class. So when I come in here to calibrate, say, I pass in root, which is referring to the root window. I also pass in parent, but the only reason I need parent is to tell the button where to go. So like parent doesn't necessarily need to be a class attribute. Like if I do that, it'll still work. And I might do it that way because that's less distracting. what I'm setting up here is when you click the calibrate button, the button is configured to be sunken and disabled. And the very next thing you do is you are assigning the, I renamed this to cal data. Cal data is part of the application data, which is in the root window. But the very next thing you're doing is you're assigning self.root.cal data is what's returned from the get cal data method. And you can go to the get cal data method. The very first thing it does is it opens up a binding on the image canvas. So root image canvas. This is an instance where I'm going up a level into root and then I'm addressing the image canvas where I'm binding a button 1 clicking event. And then I delete the previous cal data because I'm coming up with 4 new points. And then while this data set is less than 4, so as I'm picking xmin, xmax, ymin, and ymax, it's going to be in this while loop, and as soon as it gets to be equal to 4, it's going to break out of the while loop, and then I destroy this binding because I don't need to be tracking mouse click events within the canvas anymore. That's what I've got so far. I got some cleaning up to do still. Really struggling right now. What I'm trying to do is come up with a way to effectively pause the application until I get 4 data points, 4 coordinate points. And I haven't come up with a good way to do that. I don't know what the most correct way would be to just pause the app and wait for some type of input. Alright, that took a while, but I think I've got something that's working. So pretend that I load in an image and then I click this calibrate button. It goes into its disabled state. And then if I were to click 4 points on some set of axes, so xmin, xmax, ymin, and ymax, I clicked the first point, I added some print statements to help me out, added a point, third point, fourth point, added all points, return from this function, button re-enabled, and you can see the button is re-enabled. So it's working pretty much how I want it. I still haven't done anything with actually putting the values in here, but I'll show you how it works. The first thing that I had to fix is last time I was talking about I was getting this strange behavior where the button wasn't staying sunken and I had to disable it. I ran into a lot of issues when I was trying to re-enable the button, like to get it to raise back up. I just couldn't figure it out. And what I ended up doing was a suggestion that I found on Stack Overflow is within TK, a button and a label are pretty similar. You can click on a label the same way you can click on a button, and you can just change the relief settings to appear as though the label is sunken and appear as though the label is raised. That simplifies things so much because I no longer have to worry about the push buttons, embedded callbacks, interfering or colliding with callbacks I'm trying to do. So I'm calling this a button, but really it's a label. I just set it so its relief value is raised, and then I have two very simple methods, disable and enable, which just changes the aesthetic appearance of the button. So it goes to sunken, the background's white, the text is light gray, and then when I want to enable it again, it raises it, changes the background to light gray, and changes the foreground back to black. So this effectively is just a very lightweight button, if you want to consider it that. Once I got the button figured out, I had to come up with a legitimate way of having the application wait until I get the 4 calibration points. And I was really struggling with that for a bit. But what I ended up finding out is that I will, let's see where to start. TK has this wait variable attribute, and what it does is the application will wait until, wait variable function. The application will wait until the argument of the function changes. And the argument must be a like a TK string var, TK int var, TK boolean var, so on and so forth. So what I do in the root window is I set self.isDoneCalibrating, and I initialize that as an empty TK string var. And then what I do when I click the button is I bind this callback to my fake push button that I've made. And it comes in here, it disables the button, so the button appears as though it's sunken and disabled. I erase whatever cal data existed before. I set isDoneCalibrating, the boolean, to false. And then I construct a binding event such that whenever the user clicks a point within the canvas, it triggers this getChord callback. And then the way I get the application to wait is once you are inside of the callback, I append the X and Y coordinates of wherever the mouse was clicked to the cal data list. And if the list has 4 points in it, that means you're done calibrating. We set isDoneCalibrating boolean to true. And remember, the function was kind of waiting here. And as soon as it senses that the variable isDoneCalibrating has changed state from false to true in this case, I unbind, so I tear down the binding event of being able to click somewhere on the canvas, and I enable the button again to appear as though it can be clicked again. And these were some of my print statements that I had just to help me out a little bit. There is one issue here, which I ran into online, and I'm experiencing it. Well, actually, let me first pretend I go through this whole routine and I get 4 calibration points, and then I want to click the button again. I would expect that it would work because I come back in here to on button press, I set is done calibrating to false, and then I'm in my same routine of setting up the binding and then waiting for is done calibrating to get set to true from this callback. Though the application gets hung up when I go to do it a second time, and I'll show you. So I do it once, and then I click 4 times, adds in 4 points. So everything's good so far. I go to click again, and 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't say that it added all 4 points, and I can keep on clicking, and it's just gonna keep adding. And what's even more annoying about this is it is just totally hung up, because if I exit out of this window, there's no, it doesn't destroy the application. If I try to break from it, nothing happens. So I have to kill my terminal. So there's something funny going on with this wait variable, like it's not sensing that this is happening. Gotta figure that out. The condition here, it's waiting for the length of the list to be equal to 4. And when I go to recalibrate, I am effectively deleting the list here and replacing it with an empty list. So I don't see how that would be getting hung up, but clearly it's happening somewhere. All right, I just got done stitching together all of the video clips for this video, and it's getting pretty long. It's about 35 minutes now, so I think I'm going to call it for this episode. I got done less than I wanted to, but what I did get done was pretty important. Mainly in this function here, I figured out what is at least now an effective way to get a button that enables and disables, as well as figuring out this waiting game, because I'm going to have to be playing that later on when I'm grabbing points. So less than I would have liked, but still some important stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in again, and I'll see you in episode 4.